All right, so get this. We're diving into indie game development today.
Oh,
But not just any game. We're talking about Biosteel.
Biosteel.
Yeah, it was a project developed entirely solo by a student named Rickard Remelin.
Wow. Solo, that's impressive.
I know, right? And the source material is actually Remelin's own reflections on the process.
Oh, that's interesting. So like a first-hand account.
Think of this deep dive as like a quest to understand how one person pulled this off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like a mini miracle.
Right.
You know what struck me right away was that Remelin didn't just like jump in head first.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he spent a whole year intensely prepping, almost like an athlete, training for the Olympics. You know?
Wait, really? A whole year just to prepare? I mean, I get passion, but that's some serious commitment.
It is.
So what exactly was he doing during this training montage?
Well, he focused on mastering the fundamentals.
Okay.
He dove deep into Blender.
Ah, Blender.
Yeah, which is a 3D modeling and animation software.
Right.
And got a handle on the basics of game engines.
Okay, so like learning the tools of the trade.
Exactly. It's like a musician learning their scales before composing a symphony. Yeah. You need that solid foundation to build upon.
Okay, so he was laying the groundwork, but was the stopwatch thing real?
Yeah.
Was he actually timing every minute of his study sessions?
He tracked his time.
Wow.
To stay motivated and productive.
Ah.
Shows an impressive level of discipline, wouldn't you say?
I mean, I struggle to stay focused for a whole Netflix episode, so yeah, that's hardcore dedication.
Right.
Okay, so he's prepped and ready to conquer the digital world. What was his grand vision for Biosteel? What kind of experience was he aiming for?
Well, Remelin wasn't just making a game. He was building a launch pad for bigger, more complex games down the line.
Okay, so this was like a stepping stone.
Exactly, and his approach was fascinating. He focused on nailing the core gameplay mechanics first, and then let the story and setting grow around them.
So he was putting the gameplay cart before the story horse?
Yes.
That's kind of backwards from how I imagine most games are made.
Exactly. It's like building a house around a powerful engine.
Yeah.
You know, the gameplay drives the whole experience.
Okay, I like that analogy.
And in this case, the engine was spaceship dueling.
Spaceship dueling. Okay, now you've got my attention. Was he inspired by classic arcade games or something more modern?
He drew inspiration from both fighting games and space shooters.
Oh, cool. A blend of genres.
Yeah, imagine the strategic depth of a fighting game where timing and prediction are key.
Right.
Combined with the fast-paced action of a space battle.
So not just mindless blasting, there's actual strategy involved.
Exactly.
But hold on, he was a solo developer, right? How do you even begin to tackle a project like that on your own?
That's where his planning and clear vision were crucial.
I bet.
He kept his design document lean and flexible,
Oh.
allowing room to adapt as he went.
Smart.
Think of it like a roadmap that can handle a few detours.
Gotcha.
And to make it work within his budget, he chose to use Blender's freeware game engine.
Freeware. That's brave. Was that even powerful enough to handle his vision?
It definitely had its limitations.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Which forced him to balance his ambition with what was actually feasible.
Right.
He knew he couldn't create a massive AAA-style game on his own.
Of course.
So he focused on building a strong, playable core experience.
Smart move. So what were his first steps in bringing this spaceship dueling concept to life? Did he start with the explosions or maybe the epic soundtrack?
He actually began with the essentials, the building blocks of any game.
Okay, the foundation.
Think dynamic text, a user-friendly interface.
Right, the UI.
And organizing game elements into separate scenes for easier management.
So no jumping straight into the flashy stuff. It was all about laying down a solid foundation first.
Exactly. This structured approach allowed him to focus on one piece at a time, gradually building up the complexity.
Makes sense. But at some point, he had to start thinking about the fun stuff, right? Like how those spaceships were going to blow each other to bits.
He put a lot of thought into the weapon systems.
Okay, good.
And you're right, this is where things get really interesting.
I'm right.
He wanted to create a variety of weapons, each with its own strategic use.
Okay, so not just like a generic blaster.
No, not at all. He wanted to make sure it wasn't just about who could click the fire button faster.
Okay, so what kind of space arsenal did he dream up?
He started with basic red and blue shots,
Okay.
each with a corresponding shield for the opponent to block.
Ah, so you have to choose the right attack.
Yes, it's like rock, paper, scissors in space.
I love it.
You have to anticipate your opponent's moves to break through their defenses.
So already there's an element of mind games going on, even at the most basic level of combat?
Exactly. But it gets even spicier.
Oh.
He added missiles that you could detonate on command.
Ooh, sneaky.
Think carefully timed explosions to catch your opponent off guard.
Ooh, Oh, strategic. So it's not just point and shoot. There's actual skill involved in using those missiles effectively.
You got it. And to add even more depth, he included tracking missiles.
Tracking missiles.
Yeah, these bad boys would relentlessly pursue your enemy, but they could also be shot down.
Oh, so there's counterplay.
Yes, creating this tense back and forth of offense and defense.
Okay, those sound like a nightmare to deal with, especially if you're on the receiving end.
They are.
What else did he have up his sleeve?
He also included mines, which could be used to set traps or ambush your opponent.
So he's really thought this through, huh?
It's like a space chess match, where positioning and timing are just as important as your reflexes.
So he's created this whole arsenal of space weaponry, each with its own unique twist. But wouldn't that make things overly complicated, especially for new players?
To prevent that, he introduced an energy system for weapons and shields.
Okay, that makes sense.
This added a crucial layer of resource management, forcing players to carefully consider their actions.
Right, you can't just spam attacks.
Exactly. Do you go all out on offense, risking a low shield, or play it safe and conserve energy?
So it's a balancing act. You can't just spam every weapon you have. You have to think strategically about how and when to use them. That's pretty cool.
He wanted the game to be easy to pick up, but difficult to master.
That's a good philosophy.
The basic controls are simple,
Okay.
but mastering the nuances of the combat system, the different weapons and the energy management, that takes practice and skill.
Right. It's like any good game, there's always more to learn.
Exactly.
Okay, so far so good. But I have to imagine that working with a freeware engine, even with all his prep, probably threw some curveballs his way, right?
Absolutely. It was a constant dance between ambition and reality.
I bet.
And some of the limitations of the Blender game engine led to some seriously creative workarounds on Remelin's part.
I can only imagine what kind of limitations are we talking about.
Well, for example, he originally wanted to include lasers. A classic space shooter staple.
Hey, no lasers. How do you have a space battle without lasers? That's like peanut butter without jelly. It's just wrong.
It felt almost sacrilegious,
Yeah.
but the engine just couldn't handle them the way he envisioned.
Oh, wow.
He tried everything, but ultimately had to accept defeat and move on.
So no pew 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 moments. What about other obstacles? Did he run into any game-breaking bugs or glitches?
He did. He had a frustrating bug where the game would crash every time he tried to run it as an executable file.
Oh, no, that's the stuff of coding nightmares. I can't even imagine the frustration.
It really highlights the challenges of working with a less robust engine.
Definitely. But it sounds like Remelin was resourceful. He figured out a workaround and kept moving forward.
He did. He was very persistent.
Talk about perseverance. It seems like he was constantly battling the engine itself just to get his ideas off the ground.
It was a constant struggle, but his problem-solving skills really shone through.
So it wasn't just game design, it was also like engine hacking.
In a way, yes. Another challenge was figuring out how to stop the player's ship from colliding with its own shots.
Oh, wow. Imagine shooting yourself in the foot every time you fired.
Outright. That doesn't sound very strategic.
No, how did he solve that one?
His solution was simple, yet effective. Disable collision detection until the shot left the ship.
Ah, so no more friendly fire casualties. Okay, that's clever, but I'm sensing a but coming here. Surely there were more hurdles to clear, right?
There were one particularly nasty issue involved the track 2 function, which he used for enemy targeting.
Okay.
Basically, the engine would crash whenever the function lost its target.
Oh, so the targeting system was a bit buggy?
It was very buggy. It's like trying to shoot at a ghost.
Yeah, your aim goes haywire.
Exactly, and the whole game freaks out.
So aiming was literally a life or death situation for the game itself.
It was, that's a good way to put it.
That's wild. How did he even begin to fix that?
He came up with a workaround
Okay.
that involved constant communication between objects in the game to verify their existence.
Wow. So it's like the objects had to constantly check in with each other.
Yes, it was like having to constantly check if your opponent was still there before you could even aim at them.
Talk about a demanding engine, but at least he found a way to wrangle it into submission. It sounds like he was spending more time fighting the engine than actually designing the game.
There were definitely moments where it felt that way, but his dedication never wavered. He was determined to bring his vision to life no matter how many technical roadblocks he encountered.
Okay, so we've got spaceships battling it out, a whole arsenal of weapons, and a developer who's basically become a code-whispering ninja. But what about the other elements of the game? Did he have time for things like sound design backgrounds and those all-important explosions?
He did, and his approach to these aspects was just as resourceful and creative for sound design. He used a combination of freeware audio files,
Okay.
and sounds provided by a friend.
So he was crowdsourcing a little bit?
He then modified and layered them to create all sorts of effects, from engine hums to weapon blasts.
So he was
Mm.
basically a one-man sound studio. Impressive. What about the visuals? Did he create elaborate backgrounds and animations, or was it more minimalist?
Given his time constraints and the engine's limitations, he focused on simple but effective solutions.
Makes sense.
He created a seamless space image for the background, giving the illusion of movement as the ships flew. For explosions, he used a common technique involving textured planes with transparent backgrounds, creating a convincing visual effect without overtaxing the engine.
So even with limited resources, he found ways to make the game visually engaging. That's some real ingenuity.
He even managed to add basic animations for things like missile fire and the enemy ship's rotor.
Nice little details.
Small details, but they add a lot to the overall polish of the game.
Okay, so he's tackling sound, he's creating visuals, it's all coming together. But what about the story elements? Did he have time to craft those big epic narratives he was talking about?
He did create intro and ending sequences,
Okay,
but they were fairly basic due to time constraints.
I see.
He even acknowledged their limitations in his reflections and talked about potential improvements he'd like to make if he had more time.
So he wasn't able to fully realize every aspect of his vision, but it sounds like he accomplished a remarkable amount given what he was working with.
Absolutely. And keep in mind, his goal wasn't to create a polished, retail-ready game. This was a proof of concept.
Right, a passion project.
Yeah. A testament to his skills and his passion. And in that, he succeeded beyond expectations.
This has been an incredible journey so far. We've seen his meticulous planning, his creative problem solving, and his sheer determination to bring his vision to life. But there's still so much more to unpack. We'll be back soon to delve deeper into Remelin's reflections on the development process and extract some key takeaways that you can apply to your own creative endeavors. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. You know, it's amazing to see how Remelin tackled those technical challenges head on.
Yeah, he was a real problem solver.
He was, but what truly sets him apart is his approach to game design itself.
Yeah, reading his reflections, I got that sense too. He clearly has a deep passion for games, but it goes beyond just enjoying them.
Oh, absolutely.
He's fascinated by the underlying mechanics, the systems that make them tick.
Exactly. He talks about how too often game developers get caught up in the story and the visuals
Right.
before fully considering the gameplay.
Yeah, they get ahead of themselves.
They do. They end up trying to force mechanics into a narrative that doesn't quite fit, which can lead to a clunky, unsatisfying experience for the player.
It's like trying to build a skyscraper on a foundation of sand. It might look impressive at first, but it's not going to stand the test of time.
Exactly. Remelin flipped that approach. He started with a rock-solid foundation of engaging gameplay,
Right.
that spaceship dueling concept we talked about, and let the story and setting evolve organically from there.
So instead of shoehorning the gameplay into a pre-existing story, he let the gameplay itself dictate the direction of the narrative.
Precisely, he believed that the gameplay should be the heart of the experience.
Oh, okay.
Everything else from the story to the visuals should serve to enhance and support that core.
That's a really interesting perspective, and it seems to have worked out well for him, at least in terms of creating a solid and engaging gameplay loop.
It did.
He even mentioned wanting to keep the visuals relatively simple, almost abstract,
Yes.
to emphasize the importance of mastering the gameplay itself.
He wasn't interested in creating a flashy spectacle. He wanted the gameplay to be the spectacle.
Interesting.
He believed that the satisfaction of mastering a complex system, of outmaneuvering your opponent, should be the driving force behind the player's engagement.
It's a bold move relying on the strength of your mechanics rather than visual bells and whistles. It shows a real confidence in his design.
It does, and that confidence stems from his willingness to experiment, to push the boundaries of what he could achieve with the tools at his disposal.
Right. He wasn't afraid to think outside the box.
Exactly. He wasn't afraid to break conventions and find creative solutions to the limitations he faced.
He also talked about the importance of creating a game that's easy to learn but difficult to master, that seems like a tricky balance to strike.
It is, but it's a fundamental principle of good game design.
Yeah, you want to appeal to a wide audience.
You want to create a game that's welcoming to new players, but also offers enough depth and challenge to keep experienced players engaged for the long haul.
And it sounds like he achieved that by layering complexity onto those simple core mechanics.
Yes, you start with the basics, but as you play, you discover new nuances, new strategies, new ways to use the different weapons in the energy system to your advantage.
Right. There's always more to learn.
Exactly. It's that journey of mastery, that feeling of constantly learning and improving, that keeps players hooked.
And Remelin clearly understood that he wanted to empower players to become masters of the game, to develop their skills and discover new depths to the gameplay over time.
He did. And while he focused on creating a strong foundation, he also had ambitious plans to expand beyond that core gameplay loop.
Oh, really? Like what?
He mentions exploring things like exploration, character evolution, even interactive dialogue and minigames.
Wow, so he was thinking big even though this was a solo project.
It sounds like he had a vision for a much larger, more expansive game, even though he knew he couldn't fully realize it within the scope of this project.
So what kind of exploration mechanics was he thinking about?
He talks about simple exploration mechanics, like moving between planets to discover resources.
Yeah.
It's not about elaborate graphics or complex systems. It's about giving the player a sense of discovery, of venturing out into the unknown.
I like that. And what about character evolution? Was he talking about leveling up and gaining new abilities or something more unique?
He envisioned it as upgrading your spaceship,
Yeah.
improving its weapon systems, enhancing its defenses, maybe even customizing its appearance.
So it's all about player choice and customization.
It is. It's about giving the player a sense of progression,
Yeah.
of making meaningful choices that directly impact their experience.
And I think he also mentioned interactive dialogue, right?
He did, where the player's choices could shape the narrative, even if in subtle ways.
Yeah, it's about giving the player agency, making them feel like they're truly a part of the story.
Exactly. And mini-games, he believes, should be seamlessly integrated into the core gameplay loop, not just tacked on as distractions.
Right, they should serve a purpose.
He used the example of a crafting system in an RPG. Instead of just clicking a button to craft an item,
Yeah.
he suggests a minigame where the player has to actually perform the actions of crafting, adding a layer of engagement and skill to an otherwise passive activity.
So it's about finding ways to make every element of the game world interactive and meaningful, no filler content, just pure engaging gameplay experiences.
Exactly. He even touches upon the idea of incorporating a deeper, more philosophical and psychological storyline.
Oh, wow. Going deep.
He mentioned exploring complex characters and delving into themes that go beyond the typical space opera tropes.
So he was aiming for a more mature narrative.
He even mentions voice acting.
Really?
That's a pretty ambitious goal for a solo project, especially one with such a taut timeline.
Yeah, voice acting can be expensive and time-consuming.
It can, but it speaks to his commitment to creating a truly immersive and engaging experience.
Yeah.
He was willing to push the boundaries to explore every avenue, even if he knew he couldn't fully realize all of those ambitions within the confines of this particular project.
It's clear that this wasn't just a technical exercise for him. He poured his heart and soul into this project. It was a culmination of his passion for games and his desire to create something truly unique and special.
Absolutely, and that passion is evident in every aspect of the game, from those carefully designed mechanics to the thoughtful consideration of every detail you can feel, the love and dedication that went into creating Biosteel.
It's really inspiring to see what one person can achieve with enough passion, dedication, and a willingness to push their own creative boundaries.
It's a reminder that limitations can be opportunities for innovation.
That's a good point.
Remelin didn't let the constraints of his engine or his budget hold him back. He found creative ways to work within those limitations to achieve something truly remarkable.
His story is a testament to the power of indie game development. Even small, independent projects can push the boundaries of the medium and inspire countless others.
It's a reminder that you don't need a massive team or a multi-million-dollar budget to create something truly special. All you need is passion, dedication, and a willingness to put in the hard work.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've explored Remelin's technical challenges, his design philosophy, and his ambitious vision for Biosteel. But there's still more to uncover.
When we return, we'll delve into some key takeaways from Remelin's journey and discuss what we can all learn from his experience. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. We've been on quite a ride exploring the creation of Biosteel, from those nitty-gritty technical hurdles to the grand vision behind it.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It has. So now let's zoom out and see what bigger lessons we can take away from Remelin's experience.
You know what strikes me is how Remelin's approach to game design kind of echoes principles we find in other creative fields.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, he talks about starting with a strong foundation, understanding the core mechanics before building the story around them.
Right.
That's not just game design. It's music composition, architecture, even writing a novel.
You're right. It's like a painter prepping their canvas. They don't just start slapping on paint. There's a foundation that needs to be there
Sure.
first. So for Remelin, that foundation was the gameplay, that exciting spaceship dueling concept.
Right, and by building everything else around that core, he was able to stay laser focused.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it kept him on track.
it prevented him from getting bogged down in details that might not have served the core gameplay experience.
And it probably allowed him to be more adaptable when those inevitable engine limitations popped up.
Absolutely. Instead of panicking when the engine couldn't handle something,
Hmm.
he found creative workarounds.
Right. He was very resourceful.
He didn't let the limitations define the game. He found ways to innovate within those constraints.
That's such a valuable lesson for anyone tackling a creative project.
It is.
There are always going to be constraints, whether it's time budget or those pesky technical limitations.
Always.
The key is to find ways to work within those boundaries, right?
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to experiment, to think outside the box, and to find creative solutions to the challenges you face. And don't be discouraged when things go wrong,
Oh, yeah.
because they will.
They always do.
Remember all those bugs and setbacks Remelin encountered?
Oh, yeah, like that whole executable file crashing debacle. That sounded pretty hair-pulling.
Exactly. But he kept pushing forward. He didn't let those obstacles defeat him. He found ways to work around them, to adapt and keep moving toward his goal.
His experience is a great reminder that the creative process isn't always a straight line.
It's not.
There are going to be detours, unexpected roadblocks, maybe even a few U-turns along the way.
It's all part of the process. And it's that ability to problem solve, to be flexible, and to keep going even when things get tough that separates those who dream from those who create.
And speaking of driving forces, Remelin's passion for games shines through in every word of his reflection paper. You can tell this wasn't just a project for him, it was a labor of love.
Passion is essential, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely.
Without that fire, it's easy to get bogged down by the challenges, to lose sight of the end goal.
Right, you need that drive to keep you going.
You do. It's that passion that fuels you to put in the extra hours to keep pushing, even when you hit those inevitable roadblocks.
And it's contagious.
It is.
When you're passionate about something, it shows in your work. It inspires others. Look at the care Remelin put into every aspect of Biosteel, from the intricate weapon systems to the simple but effective sound design.
He really poured his heart into it.
He did. It's a game made with heart, a testament to the power of one person's dedication and creativity.
And a reminder that even small independent projects can have a big impact.
They can.
They can push the boundaries of what's possible, inspire countless others, and pave the way for future innovation.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's leave our listener with something to ponder.
Okay.
Think about your own creative endeavors. What are you passionate about? What are you working towards?
What limitations are you facing?
Yeah, and most importantly, how can you, like Rickard Remelin, turn those limitations into opportunities? Opportunities to innovate, to problem solve, to create something truly remarkable. Remember, Biosteel started as one person's dream. Who knows what your passion might lead to?
That's a great point.
That's it for this deep dive. We hope you enjoyed this journey into the world of indie game development. Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep creating.